Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the main room. I'm getting a bit of feedback. If you could so kindly just check if you are muted. First of all, I'd like to profusely apologize for the technical issues that we all, faced when we were moving into the rooms. So I will not waste any more time right now. But however, I will allow, each one of the group leaders or those that were, in the discussions with the various countries to perhaps maybe just give us a summary of what the conversation or the discussion was like. Maybe if we could start with South Africa, that was led by Mike East, and then we'll follow with Lesotho, and then end with Botswana.
Thanks, Pearl. I'll try to do justice in a few minutes here. So, as you can imagine, in South Africa, it's pretty sophisticated conversation around how to fill the gaps of early stage finance. This is an ecosystem that is not new, and there is obviously a lot of activity and a lot of players in South Africa already working on startup ecosystems. We actually spent first third of the time just introducing ourselves and saying hello, and I think that was important because there is a lot of action. We had 40 some people just in that meeting, and it's clearly there's a big diversity of organizations and players, and that there's a lot of interest and a lot of perspectives, and hopefully this is the beginning of a conversation, because in a 40-minute virtual session, you can only touch the surface of some of the issues. But we did talk about indeed that the really early stages for businesses is a very tricky one to get financed, especially for risky ventures that don't have collateral. Getting off the ground is challenging. There's some activity at the angel stage, and then there's further gaps. So one of the main points, I think, was the fragmentation of financing available for startups, that you may get financing at one step, but then run into a wall or a cliff where you can't get additional financing. I think the conversation agreed that there is a role for the public sector to come in and stimulate more early stage financing, but of course that needs to be done effectively and importantly with clarity for the ventures, because oftentimes in South Africa, there's many options for entrepreneurs to go and apply for programs, but the expectations from the programs are not always clear. And so the public sector programs need to be made more continuous and clear and run effectively. There was also discussion about how can we reach beyond sort of the tech hubs that exist and reach a more diverse set of entrepreneurs in Africa that are coming from different geographies, different backgrounds, and I think that's something that the government should consider as it's looking to support these types of programs. And I would say maybe the last point is just some participants were saying dedicated programs for startups could be considered as long as there's good follow through, and those programs would be sort of separate and distinct from the general SME business support, so that startups that fit a higher growth model would have a good avenue of support from government programs and from other private initiatives that might have some government incentives built into them. Thanks. I'll stop there and turn it over unless, yeah, for now.
Thank you so much, Mike. Lesotho?
Yes, so this is Mark. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So we had a really interesting and engaging and we were truly inspired by the different speakers in the main room. So we touched upon the different pillars. I remember that well, different pillars of you need to take care of the finance in the different stages. You need to take care of the ecosystem, and you need to take care of a startup act with different incentives. So we had this discussion with different players from the ecosystem in Lesotho, from the Basotho Enterprise Development Corporation, the SME startup, but we we started the conversation, and that was really interesting, with a true story of entrepreneur Pule, who founded a company, Technology for All, after he won a competition that was organized in Lesotho. And he was one of the 10 people that got $5,000 to start his enterprise, his idea. He didn't have any money, so this was the first money he got. But then we learned that he is one of 25 he was one of 10 that got money, but then there were 250 applications of which 25 had good ideas. So there was not enough money for all the good ideas. And then if you know that the ecosystem has more than 10,000 informal enterprises, you got to get a sense of that there's definitely support needed. And the idea was that this is something where banks have difficulties entering, also in Lesotho. So there's a need for more early stage finance. And then the ecosystem, there are ecosystems definitely would like support, and they're also interested whether the government could pick up on the startup act. That definitely sounded interesting for them. And the last point I thought was also interesting was that there is a startup network in Lesotho, but they also learned that there's one in South Africa and there's one in Botswana. So they also thought, why not connect the different networks so we can have kind of a regional connection? Let me pause here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. And the last summary report from Botswana.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Hi, everyone. So this is Zoe. So I was moderating the Botswana Startup Network breakout room. We were meant to, I think, have additional members. So I apologize for those who were not transferred over. But I still think we had a great discussion, even though it was a leaner group. So first of all, I want to thank our guest speaker, Arun Iyer, for sharing his perspective as being an entrepreneur in Botswana. He's also a member of the Angel Network Botswana. So it's great to hear that there are financing initiatives that are popping up in a small market such as Botswana, which is about population size comparable to Eswatini and Lesotho. As our discussion around early stage financing challenges, just to echo some of the themes that were raised in the other breakout rooms, is around the quality of the startups that are seeking this initial working capital of $50,000 or less. So we had a very rich discussion on how could universities, innovation hubs, such as the Botswana Innovation Hub, how can they activate mentors in the network to provide more customized coaching? Essentially, the bottom line is that we need more investment readiness programming because the environment for financing, especially for pre-Series A, is there, but it's just a question of like, are the business support organizations able to access these networks and therefore connect the firms to these sources of capital? Another key theme that I wanted to touch upon is one of our stakeholders had mentioned that in Botswana, at least, there is an over-reliance on government to act on the entrepreneurship and innovation agenda. So if anything, it was an appeal and more of a call to arms to really mobilize our startup networks in the region to address, don't wait for government. There's activities that they can certainly take on, just to get the interest of government so they can at least have that partnership down the line. But for me, a key theme would be mentorship. If you have the right role models in the ecosystem, what is a nice unifying platform that can bring all of them together? And there I will close because I think we're close to the end of time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Zoe, Mark, and Mike, for that summary report on the discussions that happened in the various groups. I will just hand over right now, and I'm not going to waste more time, to an entrepreneur who is a co-founder and CEO of an entity called Kobo360. Some of us, of course, who follow, entrepreneurial type news around the continent have read about them, and how they managed to, raise 30 million US dollars for their business, which is an app that essentially has currently more than 10,000 drivers and trucks operating on that actual app. So maybe let me not distort, that profile of his, and allow Obi Ozor to switch on his camera as well as unmute himself, and do address us. Thank you so much, Obi, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. It was very interesting listening on the background and also hearing some of the innovation and the work that's still left to be done in some of the regions. I think it's the same as well in West Africa. I think it's the same everywhere. We're opportune to be in 7 countries. We're also expanding to Middle East. We're doing an acquisition there. What I've seen is that access to capital has been quite difficult in the continent, but it has improved, honestly, in the past 3 to 4 years. Some of the key things that I'm beginning to see is that both even the debt or equity investors are looking towards the continent. Part of the challenge we do have is that we haven't been prepared to actually position ourselves to attract capital, right? So there are things that companies need to have and that other investors are used to seeing in other regions, in LATAM and other places. So I think that part of the work that the World Bank can do, which actually IFC is one of our investors, and they have actually helped us do, is to kind of prepare the companies to be able to be in a good position to attract funding. But also the IFC and kind of the World Bank can also do an interesting thing to kind of break the ice in supporting some of these companies in the initial stages and building ecosystems. For us, we've been opportune to attract IFC and Goldman Sachs in both seed round and Series A. I think one of the key things is traction. Are you really solving the right problem? Are you solving a problem that is scalable, not just a small, minute problem that is not applicable in multiple jurisdictions, right? Because in Africa, it's fragmented. So it's easy to be bogged down with just one country's problem and not solving problems that are worth investing in, right? Or what I call SMEs. So I think that that's the first challenge, is we have to solve the right type of problems. I think the second thing is, have we been able to put process in place, doing proper bookkeeping, audit? It helped us to actually attract IFC at 9 months old. By that time, we already have PwC as our auditor, right? So I think that makes it easy for people to actually understand the company. It makes it work for us. Then I also think that another thing is to see if there are different ways you can be quite creative on bootstrapping, right? So I see that there are a lot of opportunities where today there are investors that can be able to support on working capital while taking some warrants and different things. So it's also interesting to see if more startups can actually know what is available, which is part of the work that the World Bank and IFC does, just kind of education for founders. I also think that it's also interesting to have more kind of communication where people, like what we're doing now, where people can actually network and have real people, real entrepreneurs that they can reach out to, right? I'll be happy to get emails on how somebody thinks of raising money, product market fit, expansion, right? So in past 3 years, we've been able to do some of those, right? So it will be quite interesting to actually create that ecosystem where entrepreneurs are speaking to each other. And for me, we are entering South Africa actually in June of this year. So I also need partnerships on different fronts to see how we can build something that scales and power the supply chain ecosystem across Africa, right? And also financial services, which is something we're also building to help micro fleet owners. And I know this is a product that will be quite interesting in South African market, where you can support those sole drivers, right? To empower them to be able to become their own bosses as well and create a lot of jobs. So generally, that's kind of my opinion, that the ecosystem is ripe. There is interest from investors, but we also need to be solving the right problems that are scalable. We also need to prepare ourselves to receive funding, which is having all the bookkeeping and all the different things together, the audit and those things, and the control frameworks. I also believe we need to be talking to each other, right? Creating a network for entrepreneurs. I think that's even the best takeaway, because you're not going to be organizing this type of meeting every time, right? So I think the best thing is actually to find way to connect these entrepreneurs. That's how it will be sustainable. And then it's easy on a day-to-day to work out partnerships through that. So, and of course, we've attracted money from many parts of the world. We're raising a $75 million Series B now. It's been quite interesting, but at the end of the day, it's really traction. Nobody really cares that much whether it's Africa. So far, you're doing well. You have world-class team. You have different governance there, and you're solving the right problem. It doesn't really matter where you're based. I hope you were able to hear me.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, Obi.
I'll be happy to take questions. So I want people to ask questions if possible.
All right, maybe let's just take.
Yes, allow maybe 2 or 3 to make questions, to put questions. That was fantastic, Obi.
Okay, let me head over to the chat box. If you do have any questions, please do post them for us. Let me see. I see a lot of thank yous.
I thought that one or two persons
anyone maybe want to raise a hand?
Propose that they can be a partner.
Exactly. So Obi is looking for partners, and no one is saying anything.
Hi, Pearl. This is Mike. I'm happy to ask a question. If
Sure. Please go ahead, Mike.
Hi, Obi. Thanks. Very inspiring to hear about your business and able to raise finance. One question is whether you felt you were able to raise the right type of capital. Sometimes entrepreneurs in markets that don't have many options on capital, and I know you went international to raise money, feel that they have to grab whatever sort of financing is out there. And then after a few years, they realize, oh, wow, we gave up too much. We shouldn't have taken equity. We should have taken debt. We should have got an investor more aligned with our strategic interests. Was that a challenge for you, finding the right investor with the right type of financing and the right alignment of mission when you're raising funding in Nigeria?
Yeah, it was always a challenge. Honestly, it was a challenge. I think what we did was to reach out to our networks. So because, you know, that was our first time of doing real venture startups. So I think the best introduction is from other founders, from the investor mentors that haven't even invested in your company. And I think most people are willing to help. So even now, for me, it's always a challenge. For doing a 75 million Series B, I didn't know those type of investors, the growth investors, right? So I still had to depend on reaching out to some of my network to do some introduction, right? So I think that's kind of how it is. And then you ask founders, what have they seen from those other investors, right? So you're checking them out as well, right? So, and then of course, the key thing is the term sheet, right? You have to, before, when in my seed stage, I wasn't caring about it, I cared about valuation. But today, I've seen things that are more important than valuation, right? And those are kind of the governance stuff. Are you still going to be able to even make money and have fun as a founder when you exit, right? What type of controls, what are the things that these investors care about, right? So I think that's the more important thing these days. And key thing is just reach out to other entrepreneurs. They wouldn't know investors. I don't think there is anybody that invests in Africa that I don't know as an investor today. I might not have an opinion of them, right? So I think that's the key thing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Obi. There's one more question in the chat box. I'll just read it out to you. It is from Munya, who asks, to what extent was Nigeria's population a key scalability factor? How would you have fared in a less than 10 million population?
So I think that the population stuff argument doesn't really matter. All right, Kenya last year attracted almost the same capital as Nigeria, right? So I think it's about innovation, and I think you can also expand beyond your existing market. What a Nigerian did for us was building the right product, because it has all the challenges you can never face in supply chain in any country, right? So that allowed us to build a sustainable product. But apart from that, in fact, the bigger the country, the more bottlenecks you have. Today, Nigeria is 1% of our business, right? 3 years line, so not really effective, and it's very difficult to scale in big markets. It's actually easier to scale in smaller markets, right? So, but I think the key thing is building the right product. Bigger markets allow you to build a product that is well tested, that can scale in any other place. You can also look at some other market like Kenya and Rwanda, which has the right environment, and they quickly start and go to bigger markets to test that product. So I think either ways, there is no side that is easier.
So so MF does have a question as well, but maybe if I take one from the floor, and when you do answer her question as well, you can just combine the two responses if that's okay with you, Obi. I see there's a lot of excitement in the chat. So the next question is from Debuho, who asks, how would you describe the right problem to solve?
So I think that the first thing is, in this our continent, there is so much problems. In fact, there is a disease to solving too much problems. Right? So that is what I'm always cautious about, right? How I think about it, Aliko Dangote is
somebody needs to mute. Somebody needs to mute.
So how I think of opportunities and problems is, I always say that Dangote is only selling bagged sands, right? He's only selling bagged sand. He's only bagging sand, some kind of sand, and he's the richest African. That means that anything can work with the right execution, right? So there is no problem you're going to be solving that is not difficult, right? There was a time people thought that e-commerce was a walk in the park. It didn't. Fintech is difficult. E-logistics is difficult. Healthcare, there is none you will do that is not difficult. And we have enough problems here. You just make sure that it's something you're passionate about. Because if in Silicon Valley, they have 20% problem, in Africa, you're going to have 100, right? Challenges to bottlenecks to that. So it has to be something you're passionate about. It has to be something that you're willing to bootstrap and actually scale, even when the venture funding doesn't come. Honestly, when we're doing whenever we are working, we don't actually think venture, honestly. The venture just happens, right? So it has to be a problem you're passionate about, a problem that you understand a little bit. That's kind of the key thing, right? I don't think there's enough problem here. It's just something you understand and you're passionate about, and you will be there for all the milestones and the challenges you're going to face. Here, it doesn't take 2 years. It takes 5 to 10 years to build a good company.
All right, thank you for that, Obi. I will stop right here, although I do see some more questions in the chat box. So when you do get time, please do so kindly. Maybe respond to a few of those questions that you can within this time. I will at this point allow Marie-Francoise Nelly to help us with the closing remarks as well as the next steps. But before she does that, she has a question of her own that she would like to pose to you.
Yeah, and it's really too bad that we cannot allow the participant to continue to ask Obi's question. And I think that gives us good idea on how to follow up on this type of webinar, because I think that we are now in the subject in the last 15 minutes. Obi, at the beginning of the presentation, I don't know if you were there from the beginning. The Salma from Tunisia presented the Startup Act and the legislations. I was in the South Africa breakout, and I didn't hear actually anybody raise, constraint from the legal perspective. And I know in doing business, we are always coming where, so for example, for South Africa now, I believe it takes 35 days to start a business. So did you see that these legal issues were actually surmountable? You actually did not mention it as a first issue. So what is your sense on that? Because I think I like your point to say we need to tackle the right issue. And I'm asking myself, maybe, as a community, we are going after the wrong issues. So on the legal side, what is your sense?
Yeah. So I think that is a big challenge, especially when we are already in 7 countries. It can be quite an interesting headache on different fronts. But the problem, of course, is we've given up at times. So we are used to facing inefficiencies and accepting it, right? But I think that's where the World Bank comes in, and they understand relationship with government, right? But honestly, we just see it as like this is a bad dream, and we're just going to handle it. But I think that is something that can actually make things much easier as well, and especially on tax, especially tax for startups. Like, we just don't understand this. Like, there's no competitiveness in an investor funding an African company than in a company in China. It's not that that the bottlenecks we face will allow us to grow faster. We're not going to grow faster. We have too much bottlenecks. And even when it comes to tax, it's not even friendly. So I think there are works we need to do to make ourselves attractive here, especially from the policy side, right? We have to understand that people don't owe Africa anything. They don't owe us anything, right? They just need return, right? And we have to make it quite interesting. So I think the government needs to understand that what is more important in this continent is jobs. What are they even collecting from taxes? Like, if is it the same taxes they're going to already steal? So I think that the most important thing is to remove all these tax things for startups and the investors so that they can pump money here and create jobs. That is what is important, not all these taxes.
Madam Director, you want me to go ahead with my conclusions?
Yes, you may go ahead, MF.
Okay, thank you very much. This is why, as I was telling you at the beginning, why I'm so fond of this program. This was so fascinating, and I was sending messages to my team to say, we need to change gears here, enough. So, first of all, apologies for, the technicalities. Oh, you have a beautiful son, Obi. Can you show it? This is a little entrepreneur. Can you show us a little entrepreneur in the making? So first of all, apologies for the glitches, but I mean this is part of every human initiative. So let me start maybe with that to make a proposal, and then if you can respond in the chat, that we will allow the various country groups to continue the thinking. And you will tell me, maybe we give you 1 week, 2 weeks, and then there is a core team that will distill this idea. And then I propose that we convene in 2 weeks. This is not, it's a nice webinar and then we meet next year. No, it's too late, So if you agree with this approach, let us, agree that we will do that, first thing. The second, I think that I heard the various groups, in the report that we have the Lesotho network, the Botswana, South Africa. How can we convey as a platform? That is precisely the essence of the thinking, is that you are able to connect. And what we could hear already is that there are already opportunities. Unfortunately, in the short time that we had, we didn't have enough time to introduce. But I mean, here Obi said, I want to invest in South Africa. Who is ready to join me? I mean, and I'm sure that there are a number of you like that. Similarly, I'm sure that there are opportunities that exist already in South Africa that can be rolled out in Botswana, that can be rolled out in Lesotho, and vice versa, by the way. Because, we had a seminar last week in Lesotho. I don't know if you are aware. Lesotho is, the second African country that is tapping into the AGOA, which is, the free trade arrangement with the US. And I mean, for a small country, they were able, despite, the fiscal and tax constraint that Obi mentioned, to keep, their competitiveness to some extent and to sell, to the US $300 million. For small countries like Lesotho, this is 10% of their GDP. It's not, little. So I would like that maybe if we agree, and please write in the chat if you agree with that we accelerate, this platform and we start talking, of these ideas, not, what is the legal structure, who is in place, this is how we did it in the Maghreb. It was kind of organically developed. And as we move, we see the need. So I think that this is really my second, recommendation on that, if you agree. Now, the third one, what really came out, particularly in the South Africa, session where I was, is that we need indeed to clarify, the targets. Because if we are going to support, entrepreneurs, maybe at very small scale in the township, that will be obviously different from the project that Karim, I believe, presented, in artificial intelligence in North Africa. But at the same time, we need to tackle both and differently. It's not either or, but, and I think that it's been third discussion where we say we need to have two streams because it does not require the same element. So I would suggest that if you agree, we start seeing in our countries, and this is what you will need to do for me in your group, is to say what are the clusters that we are seeing, and based on that, we can see how to support. Then the fourth one, I think that was very clear. I really like, Obi, what you said was to say, we need, because before I go to this one, the one that I think, was it Karim who said we need to have success stories. And there is clear that there are success stories, but we know, and no man will be able, in fact, I should have given him the floor before talking, but I get so excited. We know that 1,000 flowers, 10 will blossom. But this is what we need. I told you at the beginning, enjoy the little thing, because one day there will be the large thing. I went 2 years ago to Silicon Valley with the leadership of the MENA region, and we saw how this started. I'm sure that the first 5 years, there were maybe only 10, 20, 50, but what is important is it's solidly anchoring that, So I think that as we move, we must be realistic that indeed there will be, but we need to have some successes. And it comes to the question, the point that Obi made, and I think that he had a question. Somebody said, what do you call asking the right question? I mean, you have to think. It's not that everybody comes and said, I am an entrepreneur and start something. You need to think how to say, what you are putting on the table makes sense from a business perspective. You are addressing a problem. And as Obi said, I mean, there are quite a few that we can, tackle. So maybe, as we support the process, we can think through how to accompany that. And I think that this is, again, where the network, because your country, you see the opportunities, you can, you can see how to direct. I think that it was the Lesotho entrepreneur who said, I was able to get some money, but there were 25 other good ideas, I didn't get it. So of course, what we the World Bank can do, and I'm coming to this next point, is that it's very clear that, we are being told we need, in fact, seed financing, public financing. To complement, because, and particularly in Southern Africa, I mean, let's face it, the history of the country. I mean, many people, they don't have an uncle, a rich uncle that will come and say, okay, I'm going to give you $10,000 or, I mean, run, to start thinking your ideas. So that means that if, we, the partners and the government, we are serious about it, we need to support that. And I was pleased to hear that South Africa Small Enterprise Development and South Africa Small Finances is doing that. But the next point is that, I think it was Sarah, or I'm just trying to see, no, Tanya, who said, the trouble with us is that we have too many initiatives, So then the whole is less than the sum of the part. So to me, the next thing is how can we, the point is not to say we need to eliminate South Africa SME development, but entrepreneurs, they need to go where they are going. So something I'm telling you that I've been telling my team, I said, is there is one thing that the World Bank can do. If we can work, with you to create this platform, and thankfully now, it's been almost 1 year that we've been working virtually. if we can create this platform so that, you know, the entrepreneur say, okay, let me click here. Okay, I need some support in this area. Obi told you in no unclear term, forget it if you don't have your accounts. Don't think that you will come. So, you know, the technical support on accounting, who can provide that, you know? The SASMEs, you know, a number of people didn't know about it. I'm sorry, you know, the head of SME development. But maybe, you know, if we start putting the things together on a platform, then we will start seeing the consolidation. And then I think that something that we did with Morocco that I actually like was that, and it came very clearly here to say, you know, you need to support these entrepreneurs because, you know, they have an idea, they have not been in the real world. So these incubators that, you know, provide support, what the World Bank did, you know, in Morocco, government came to us, you know, they did their analysis themselves. We didn't do it. They said, we know that we have a market gap in the early seed financing. So we want to take money from the World Bank, but we will give it to the incubators. So there was a very transparent way, and the incubators were, you know, getting the money. And also the funders, they put also money in the investment fund to say, we put, you know, 5 million, you put 5 million, and we give you even grant money to basically develop this pipeline that we talk about, you know? So that has worked very nicely. And I think I don't have the update because I'm no longer working on the Maghreb, but this is how things built. So I have these 4 suggestions. So in terms of what, let us have the platform, you know, the connection. So, you know, the Obi, the, you know, the numbers, Karim, who spoke on, I'm sure that Karim is already in touch with Cape Town. Once you are connected, you will find out that, you know, the ideas will flow, you know, horizontally in a very nice way. So if we can agree that we establish that fairly quickly, we don't need to wait 6 months to have a nice show. Second, you know, the point is that how you, the youth, you go back to government to say, you know, government, we need to see how, for example, I know that the government of South Africa did a lot of effort, you know, in putting the guarantee scheme, in putting the resources. That was, of course, to protect the existing job. But, you know, the president made a statement to the nation last week, and he clearly said, we want to support the development of new enterprises. So this is where the youth, you can come and say, this is what we can do, you know. And then, of course, third is that we link with the first point, we can help establish this network, you know, this electronic network where you could have the information. So that will be a good start. If we were able to agree that, you know, these are the 3 things, 4 things that we can do, I would like to suggest that the country teams work on the 3 questions that were posed, and then you reflect also on what I've just said. And I would like you to come, let's say by March 1st, we are the 19th here. Can we say that by March 1st, you will send us back, you know, to the nucleus, you know, your findings. And then with Madame Pearl, we will actually organize a follow-up plenary where we will validate, you know, a process, and then we will take it from there. You know, even without getting money from the government, there are already 2 or 3 things that we can do, you know? So if you are okay with that, I think that that could be a nice way to proceed, and then we'll see how we integrate information in terms of the incubation. Let me allow my partner, Numan, who actually worked very closely with us to establish the startup network in the Maghreb. We had numerous sessions where we were, you know, rubbing our mind to see how to do it. So I see that here we have the maturity. We don't need to start from scratch as we did in the Maghreb. So I'm quite excited to be honest with you. So over to Mr. Noman with concluding remark, and Madame Pearl, as program director, you need to tell me if this roadmap is agreeable to you. So Noman.
Sure. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Marie-Francoise. I think it's really enlightening. And now, as mentioned, we need to go into real action plan per country in the three area has been mentioned: the ecosystem, the legal framework, etc. But do something real. What can we do independently from what's going to happen anywhere from the government? There is one thing you mentioned that I wanted to stress, which is the importance of diaspora. And maybe, like you did, you mentioned it, but it's maybe you should focus on the linking diaspora, building the linkages between diaspora and Silicon Valley and other parts in Europe or whatever part, and local countries, and that would be something to think about. I stop here, and thank you again for the support for the youth in South Africa and in Africa in general.
So, Madam Program Director, do you agree with this way forward? Do we have people having agreed on the chat, and then we'll send them the information? We'll ask to have a lead per country to organize a discussion. Yeah?
Yes, agreed, MF.
Okay, wonderful. So with that, let me wish you a wonderful weekend. I'd like to do a quick debriefing, Pearl, with you and a few others. I hope that you have these 30 minutes, and then so that we close the loop completely. But you will hear from us all, and I would like that you already start identifying your head in each country.
Thank you. Thank you very much, MF, and thank you so much for everyone that has joined us here today. We hope to reconnect with you soon during our follow-up. Have a good day.